I'm Eddie Cannell.
And I'm Tom Cannell.
We're the Mortgage Brothers team in Phoenix, Arizona. Welcome to our podcast, everyone. This is our 11th episode. And Tom, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're talking about solar panels. Are solar panels all sunshine, or do they sometimes have some storm clouds above them? So let's talk about, this is not a pro and versus con, but this is how should borrowers view solar panels as if they're walking up to the house that they're looking at buying, whether they know the house has solar panels or not. Oftentimes, our borrowers will walk out of a house and say, I had no idea it had solar panels. Is that good? Again, we're not talking pros and cons, but we're talking about it from the lender's perspective. So let's dive right in. First off, the big question is how do lenders view solar panels? Are they even allowed?
And the answer is yes, they are allowed in almost all cases. So the solar panels that the owner, right, the seller has are either leased or owned. Really, those are the two options. And the lender, when we do the loan, we just want to know, a couple things. And one of them is we want to make sure that the solar agreement that the owner has, we're going to get a copy. We want the buyer to get a copy of it, and then we're going to get a copy of it too. We want to make sure that there is a warranty against all malfunction and defect that the solar panel company basically warranties that work on those panels. And that lease must be transferable to our buyer. Okay.
And why would the transferability thing be important? Right? It would be important to be able to have rights to that lease.
Yes. So, and I forgot, it has to be transferable, whether it's owned or leased. Now, if it's leased, inherently there is a payment, a lease agreement with a payment to the owner, because the owner of the solar panels isn't the seller. It's, let's just take Solar City, for example. It'll be one of those big solar companies. They are the owner. They have to transfer it to the new buyer.
Okay. So if we were to make this analogous to a car, it's like a car sitting on your roof. That car is either owned or it's leased. And if it's owned, you may or may not have a payment on it. You may pay cash for it.
That's right. Go ahead.
And if it's leased, you will have a lease payment on it. And instead of giving it back to the dealership, solar companies don't go. I don't think they actually come and take the systems off of houses. The lease would actually be a long lease, a 20 to 25-year lease. And at the end of that lease term, there's either going to be renewal rights or ways to upgrade the solar system, because after 25 years, that solar is probably getting pretty tired. That's
right.
Okay.
And so if an owner owns that solar panels outright, there's no loan. Well, that's easy. It's a part of the real estate. It just goes right with the house. It's just a fixture of the property. But if there's a loan on there, that loan itself is with the property, as a lien, and it must be transferable to the new buyer as well.
Okay. So you have...
Well, it doesn't have to be. I know deals that actually the sellers have actually paid that off as a condition of the contract.
Okay. So if you have a nice seller, they'll actually pay that off for you.
Yeah.
Not always, not typical, but sometimes.
Yeah. It's always good to know if, how much is that balance even before you make your offer, because I had a seller who, he only owed he owed $5,000 left, and the buyer used that as a kind of leverage, pay off that. And that's part of the conditions of the sale.
Right. Okay. So the transferability protects the borrower. What does the actual solar company have to protect themselves? Because all of a sudden they had, owner A, and now owner B is coming along. Do they have the rights to be able to do a credit check or do any type of a qualification on borrower B?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question, because, any buyers out there, they're going to have to qualify for that new lien, or that, the lien on the lease or the loan transfer, because you're now going to be essentially someone who's going to be obligated to make those payments. So yeah, they're going to pull your credit, so there may be certain credit limitations you have to be aware of. Mm-hmm.
And we're really bringing this up not to frighten anyone, because the chances are there's a higher threshold for qualification on buying a house than there is for qualifying for that solar lease. So it's not like you're going to get into a position where you're going to be able to afford, the $300,000 house, but guess what, guys? You can't
Yeah.
afford the solar system. But it is something just to be aware of, that there will be a credit check likely, and things like that, because this is still a two-way street. There is a borrower and there is an owner of that solar lease, if it's being leased to you. Okay, so we talked about, are they allowed? The answer is yes. There's some things within the actual solar agreement that a borrower can look at. Not all borrowers really want to be digging through a solar lease. So my guess is 98% of all the solar agreements out there will meet the needs of a lender, but should be considered as part of the due diligence going into the house. Now let's talk about value, because the borrowers / buyers walked up to XYZ house, didn't even know it had a solar system. Now it does. Not so much from a market value perspective, but from an appraisal perspective. What does an appraiser do with that? Because the owner, that'll be part of whether or not, the borrower can qualify for this loan, or if the house appraises. Does it affect appraised value?
Okay. The answer is different for lease panels. Appraisers will not count value. It will not give any value for a solar panel that's leased. And so what will happen is, again, it's considered just a fixture, but that is a part of the house at that moment, but it is, because it is a lease. The guidelines have basically said no value.
Now, why do you think that is? Because that's frustrating. You've got a system that potentially costs, what, 10, 15, 20,000, and the appraiser's going out there saying that there's no value to it. How can that be?
Yeah, I think that with the appraisal and the guidelines that came out by the institutions like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, FHA, and the VA, is that they thought that ownership of the panels would demonstrate that you actually own that asset. The fact that the owner of the panels would be Solar City or some large, solar panel company, if you didn't have ownership, it's like if you had leased the pool. Now, the pool, there's not I can't think of a good an example that's similar, but it's basically, there's nothing else in your home that is leased. A home is about ownership. The asset itself, the collateral, is about ownership.
Right.
The fact that you have a fixture up there that's leased puts it in a category where they just won't allow that value to be. Now that may change over time, but for now they're saying lease panels.
Okay. And there's probably an argument to be made that there's a useful life calculation on solar panels, and after a certain point, there's diminished value, and at some point they have what value.
Yeah.
Now, what happens if solar panels are actually owned?
So if they're owned, you're going to see the value adjustment on the appraisal. If in most cases you're going to see a value adjustment, but it's probably going to be very small. Okay. Any buyer out there or seller, don't think that you're going to all of a sudden get a great, appraisal. Then they're going to give you the value of your panel or your system. If you spent $20,000 on your system, you might only see a $5,000 adjustment on the appraisal. And in some cases, they don't even have to, because if the comparable sales in the neighborhood do not demonstrate that solar panels give value, they don't have to. Okay. So, you know what I mean? Like, if there is no evidence, then they won't give it. Now, again, it's an asset. If you own it, it just will not give you, it'll just be a line item adjustment on the appraisal, and likely will be small.
Right. And then this is when I feel bad for the appraiser's job, because, in these large communities where I don't know what percentage of homes have solar panels, but it's got to be hard to make an appropriate adjustment so that he does give the most true value he can to it. Solar panels are tough. Okay, now forgive me for asking this, but have we talked about how solar panel payments potentially affect qualifications?
No, I'm glad you asked, because when we were talking about the leases and the liens, what we forgot to talk about is the actual payments themselves. If there is a production guarantee in your lease agreement or the ownership agreement, the lender, us, when we do the loan, will not count that payment, the loan payment or the lease payment, against you. So again, there's a production guarantee, which means the solar company says, if your solar system doesn't produce, so many kilowatts an hour for so many months, we'll actually refund you.
Okay, so AKA that's basically a payback that your lease could be $150 a month, but they're going to guarantee you that you're going to at least receive $150 worth of energy savings.
Right.
Which is one of the ways that they justify being able to install the system. Okay.
Yeah, and that really protects the borrower too, because if the borrower buys the house with the system, okay, that's great that it's producing energy today, but what if in 2 years those cells go defective or something that they just don't produce well?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Not only are you going to be paying APS and SRP the bill, you're going to be paying this extra loan payment. So that warranty will help. That production guarantee will help offset.
Okay. So basically, if we just kind of recap here real quick, lenders allow them, more homes are achieving solar panel systems today than they have been over the recent past. And my guess is that number will continue to climb. From a value perspective, if they're leased, appraisers aren't giving any value to them. So just be very mindful of that. If they're owned, appraisers will give some value, but it'll be limited value, probably even more so than a pool. And then from a qualification standpoint, when we look at PI, TI, a potential mortgage insurance payment, a homeowners association payment, and now a solar payment, I mean, those things can really impact how you get qualified. So that is one important thing, is to find out, is there a lease payment? Is there a loan payment associated with that solar panel?
Right. And I'm going to say one more thing too, that when we close the loan, the title company, if there is a lien, right, from the loan or a lease, title company is going to be required to release that lien before we put our lien on. They wanted to release that lien of the solar company and then put that back on afterwards.
Okay, so it can only be in second position then.
Yeah, and there can be a fee for that the solar company will charge. So we've seen it a couple $100, but in some cases there's no fee. But that mechanism needs to be done, and the real estate agents, buyers, everyone's, by the end of the transaction, they'll actually kind of be very familiar with how that all works. But
right, okay. And then I thought I would end it by saying this, because I was scratching my head, and I have been for years, about solar panels, and it dawned on me as we're getting ready for this podcast that I'm thinking solar panels are a lot like electric cars, in that the electric industry, as well as the solar industry, is getting efficient enough to be able to start producing, in more mass levels. But there's still, developments and still enhancements that need to be made to make it 100% worth it. So when you're getting solar panels, you are getting savings from it. But at the end of the day, the payment that you're making versus what you're getting back is still very, very close. So it's not a no-brainer. And I was talking to a neighbor of mine who's got this electric car, and we were talking about the gas savings that he gets with his electric car. And I figured out that the savings he gets with his electric car over gas is the same amount of money that he spends to actually buy electricity, whether he's pulling it from his house or whether he's paying for it at one of these electric stations. And also, to continue the analogy, the slight inconvenience that he has in trying to find an electrical charging station is the same inconvenience a borrower may have when they go to re-roof their home because of a solar system. They've got these panels up on this roof. There's just little things about these solar systems that, again, they're what I'm going to call kind of a feel-good component.
Yeah, I agree. This is something where, okay, yes, solar panels are going to lower your bills. They're going to be a great way to, offset the rising costs from our power companies like APS and SRP. But at the same time, you're going to have, the panels themselves are going to, probably the technology is going to get better. Things will become more affordable over time.
Right.
And,
right. So I think final recap is solar panels are becoming more popular. We can absolutely lend on them. Just keep in mind some of those technical pieces within the solar agreements themselves, and know, along the way that you may be replacing some solar panels, and there may be some slight inconveniences as you re-roof and whatnot, and you're not getting a ton of value out of them, like most people think. So keep those in mind, and hopefully that isn't digging too much into it.
I think it's good. I think we covered it. And of course, anyone has questions, I'm sure we've probably missed something. You guys might have something that you need answered further. Please reach out to Tom and I. And Tom, I think we're good.
I think so. Let's call it a day.
Time to go home.
All right. We'll see you, folks.
Bye, everyone. Hey guys, thanks for listening to the Mortgage Brothers Show. Please let us know if you have any questions you'd like us to answer on this podcast. You can email your questions to Tom at azmortgagebrothers.com or yours truly at Eddie@azmortgagebrothers.com. And be sure to ask us for a free quote on your next mortgage. Tom and I will personally work with you and help you through the whole process. Signature Home Loans, LLC does not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisor before engaging in any transaction. Signature Home Loans, NMLS 1007154, NMLS number 210917 and 1618695, Equal Housing Lender.